I spent roughly 15 hours streaming the new Dragonknight on PTS, and about 5 more hours off stream. And in this video, I'll give you my feedback. I have been testing 3 playstyles: solo, DPS, and tank. I did not test heavy attack playstyle, and it's something I'm planning to do later. I mean, it's only the first week of PTS, so we still have plenty of time. And I wanted to first play with all the new abilities, instead of focusing on heavy attacks. Here's how I'll structure the feedback. First, I will go over all of the skills and give feedback on them specifically. Then I'll very briefly talk about the new visuals. Then I'll talk about solo, then DPSing, and lastly tanking. And at the beginning I also want to say I'm disappointed that we're not getting some kind of pure class buff for all classes. The changes we're getting are improving stuff for pure class DK, but what about other classes? With the way things are going, I trust them to eventually get it right, because they got DK right in my opinion, but the remaining reworks will take 2 years, and we just can't wait this long. We need some kind of temporary pure class buff, on top of all of that. Starting off with Lava Whip. Molten Whip feels extremely good to play, with the proc condition being changed to using any DK ability, instead of just Ardent Flame abilities. The rotation feels so fun, and on a Stam DK you can use Magma Fist as a builder, and Molten Whip as a spender. Flame Lash suffers a lot from how good Molten Whip has become. I mean, it already wasn't being used, but with a 33% bonus damage from each stack, and proccing from every DK ability, and not just Ardent abilities, Molten Whip is extremely powerful and extremely fun to play. Flame Lash just doesn't compare. The healing it does is pretty weak, and you're better off getting more damage from Molten Whip, which translates into more healing if you're using Pedal the Ring, which you should in solo. Also, if you're a Magka build, and you need a Magka spammable, the Engulfing Dragonfire is a superior option, that also becomes much more powerful after each take flight. I have no suggestions here. Molten Whip feels a lot better now, and Flame Lash stays a dead morph, as it has always been. Next, Searing Strike. I'm disappointed that the tick rate wasn't changed to 1 second. With the duration being reduced to 10 seconds, I was hoping it would now tick every second instead of every 2 seconds, and I was hyped to use Runecarver's Blaze on my DK. But no, it still ticks every 2 seconds, which makes Runecarver a bad choice. I think Searing Claw should do a bit more damage. I don't think you're being properly rewarded for keeping up a 10-second dot at the moment. It is stronger than other options, but not by much. So I think the effort to reward ratio is not what it should be. I really like the massive heal you get from applying Burning Embers. It makes stacking it up much safer because you get a massive heal whenever you cast it. It also means it has another situational use. Yes, it's a dot, but you can also spam it for massive healing when under temporary pressure, which I've already managed to utilize in some solo fights. Next, Core of Flame. I love this ability in solo play. It scales with missing resources, so it rewards playing risky. You need to actually get low on resources to make good use of it. And the solo flame morph deals damage similar to a regular spammable. So it's not like it's a wasted cast if you cast it at higher resources. You're still dealing decent damage and getting a Molten Whip stack. I kinda dislike the interrupt delay on solo flame. It's very annoying and I don't know what it's meant to achieve. I found it very hard to sustain on a Stam DK build. I think this is an ability which could benefit a lot from changing its cost based on your dominant resource. I'm surprised they didn't use this anywhere in Dragonknight's kit, considering Arcanist is full of it. The ability felt pretty bad on a tank. Tanks have much lower maximum resources, so the ability restored a lot less, but they had the same cost. It basically wasn't worth casting. I think the solution to that would be having some part of the resource restored be flat, let's say some flat amount, plus 10% of missing resources instead. As for the Heart of Flame morph, the heal is pretty bad. Health cannot be treated similar to resources. You aren't staying on low health for long. In ESO, your health can fluctuate between almost dead and full in a matter of seconds. Getting a crit heal on a self-heal ability like Coagulating Blood can heal you up to full instantly. So it wasn't something you would cast for a reliable heal, you'd cast it for the resources and maybe you'd get some tiny bit of random healing if you had some missing health the moment it ticked. Hearthfire feels pretty good. I haven't played healer so I didn't try Firekeeper, but I played around with Hearth and Home. The heal actually scales with your max HP, which is great. Minor Fortitude is health recovery, so it's a useless buff that can be ignored. But Minor Heroism is a nice buff that can save you and your teammates a lot of money on heroism potions. Being able to give yourself major protection while still supporting your team with the same skill feels nice because you don't have to take anything away from your team in order to help yourself. Like the way you do if you wanted to source major protection from Revealing Flare. As for Inferno, not much has changed here. Cauterize is completely unchanged. Incinerate is now a wave instead of 3 projectiles, has increased cost, and has increased chance to proc burning. It's still a pretty strong ability, that's being used in the same way as always. No feedback here. Now, Dragonknight Standard. From a DPS or solo POV, it's pretty bad. Even if I started a fight with lots of ultimate, I was better off casting a cheaper ult like Take Flight. I'm talking about damage here, because the standard also has the benefit of damage reduction, which can be important in solo, for specific mechanics. The shifting standard retained the damage, but it's absolutely not worth it. Just like with Standard of Might, I was better off casting another Take Flight instead of it. So standard seems pretty bad for solo. For DPSing, it might have a place in more optimized raid comps, where you'll want 1 or 2 DDs to use it. But from what I've seen, people really don't like it. They don't like DK's identity of relying on standard being taken away. As for tanking, it's pretty good. It's inferior to support ultimates that boost damage, like Glacial Colossus or Aggressive Horn, but it's perfect if you want to support your group's damage, while also helping yourself survive. I've been using it in Stone Garden, and the 25% damage reduction helped a lot. It strikes a good balance between supporting your group's damage and being kind of a selfish ultimate that boosts your own survivability. I know people have been saying that it's the shifting standard that should be the support one, and it makes sense. As a tank, being able to relocate your support standard would be really nice. Now passives. Combustion, I really like the cooldown reduction. It now properly rewards you for building into stats effects and constantly proccing burning. Traumatic burns is okay. I like Fan the Flames, but I wish it counted your backbar abilities too. It would reward you even more for slotting DK abilities. Right now, you're mostly rewarded for filling your front bar with DK abilities, while the backbar is whatever. And Assault Ablaze is just an 8% healing taken buff. There's not much to say about that one. Now moving on to Draconic Power. As for Dragonfire Breath, the morph changes it so much it's impossible to talk about the base ability, so let me move on straight to the morphs. Engulfing Dragonfire feels great to use. The only issue is that it's currently the stronger option. The dev comment in patch notes said that they wanted it to be an accessibility option, for people who want a slower rotation, but in the current state, it's straight up easier and better. They also said they wanted it to be an ability you use sometimes, to give yourself some room to breathe during a rotation. But that's not the way it functions right now. After you use Take Flight, you want to continuously channel it for a very long time. This is fun if you want to make an entire build around breath, but it can be boring otherwise. I feel like Engulfing Dragonfire should have some kind of incentive to channel it every now and then, on regular builds, like a 20-second dot that lingers after, or maybe it could spend a new type of resource. Disintegrating Dragonfire feels pretty weak. It always ends up being weaker than the channeled morph. I know it provides major breach, but that didn't make Unsalting Elemental Susceptibility worth it in solo. That skill is so busted there was a massive damage increase, even when I already had major breach, from Disintegrating Dragonfire. It definitely needs a buff. Moving on to Dark Talons. Burning Talons looks promising. The issue is that Stamp DK wouldn't sustain it, in solo at least. And Mag DK wants to spend a lot of time channeling the breath, which makes keeping up Talons kind of impossible. Or at least, while your Take Flight buff is active, you're always better off recasting Engulfing Dragonfire, rather than recasting Talons, which makes it so they're not really worth slotting. Choking Talons are as useless as ever. Sacrificing a skill slot for a Snare and Minor Maim is absolutely not worth it. Dragonblood is the one where I'll hold off with Judgment for a bit. I didn't get enough time to properly test Green Dragonblood, so I will only talk about Coagulating Blood, but I'll definitely test it later. I really like tying Minor Courage to a regular healing ability. This way, you aren't tinkering how to fit Minor Courage into your setup. It's just tied to a staple healing ability you are going to use anyway. Being able to heal your allies with it is also extremely nice. Overall, a DK under pressure is going to provide so much survivability to teammates now. Because you want to pop Standard, which increases yours and theirs mitigation, and you want to spam Coagulating, which heals both you and them. Next, Wing Buffet. An extremely situational ability which I didn't get to test yet, and I probably won't because I don't think I'll be setting up a trial run on PTS, and I don't see it being useful in any dungeon. It sounds extremely strong, but at the same time, extremely situational. Another issue with that is that whenever there's a huge danger coming from projectiles, you can shield your teammates with the damage shield from Elemental Blockade, which you'll have slotted at all times. It just feels like the use case for it is going to be so extremely rare. I really feel like they should give it another functionality because of how situational projectile damage reduction is. I know it has minor protection, but come on. I could slot Ulysses Contingency instead, and I will have a damage shield, a unique damage reduction from Gladiator's Tenacity, and minor protection on top of that. Protect the Brood is just inferior. They could give it a damage shield, which would help, but still wouldn't make it better than scribing damage shields. It would be a shame to waste such a cool visual on a giga situational skill. Moving on to Chains of Flame. The pulling morph, Chains of Dominance, feels good to cast and is strong. No feedback here. Everything is just correct. Chains of Devastation is too weak. I tried to make it work, I tried casting it right before Engulfing Dragonfire on a Breath build, but I was always nerfing myself. It was always resulting in less damage than if I just cast my Breath without pre-buffing this major Berserk. The skill is just severely undertuned. If according to Zos, Minor Berserk should have 20-second duration on scrap skills, then surely Major Berserk having a 10-second duration on a class skill wouldn't be too overpowered, right? Now Dragon Leap. Let me quickly summarize Ferocious Leap. Garbage. No tank is going to spend 125 ultimate on an ability that gives them a weak shield and stuns enemies. Honestly, they could just use this ultimate to give a different interaction to Engulfing Dragonfire. So instead of changing anything in Engulfing Dragonfire itself, we could alter it by morphing Dragon Leap. Ferocious Leap could, for example, give us a single, way stronger Engulfing Dragonfire cast, so we only channel it once after the leap, instead of channeling it 3 times for 15 seconds total. Take Flight is so good. It's extremely powerful and enables Engulfing Dragonfire to do so much damage. It's so powerful it actually makes it worth it to spec a bit more into ultimate generation, just to get more uptime on it. The only bad thing is the awful knockback. Just look at this. I really hate the knockback, like... Pushing the ads away... This doesn't make me feel powerful, as those put it in their article. It makes me feel like a moron for unstacking enemies right before I'm supposed to follow up with Engulfing Dragonfire. Take Flight simultaneously buffs Engulfing Dragonfire and works against it by unstacking enemies. Please remove the knockback. And I don't have much to say about Draconic Power passives. They're just good. Now, Superheated Ward. Or rather, just Magma Fist, because I don't play healer, so I didn't try the damage shield morph. Magma Fist felt better, but not because of the skill itself. It feels much better because it provides Molten Whip stacks, which provides this very satisfying builder-spender loop between Magma Fist and Molten Whip. And before someone crucifies me for saying it feels better when it looks like poop, I'm only talking about the rotation. It feels much better in a rotation. I'll talk about its bad visuals later on, in the visual section. The value nerf feels extremely bad. At 65, Stone Giant was providing roughly a 4% damage increase when fully stacked, and now with 33, it's a 2% increase. I know this was moved to Shatter Spike Mantle, but that's just for the DK DPS itself. If you're a DK tank, then you'd only be providing a 2% damage increase to your DDs with that skill, which simply isn't worth it. The skill will be dead in dungeons because it will compete with too many better skills. Even something like Minor Courage is a 4% damage increase, and it can come with a damage shield and an ulti gen if you put it on Soul Burst. An ability that provides 2% damage increase and nothing else, while also draining your stamina, will never be used on a dungeon tank. It could only be squeezed into trial setups. But considering the ability is pretty good on a DK DD, it will probably just be provided by DDs, not tanks. As for Igneous weapons, I absolutely love the trend of giving support abilities some decent damage, so the support DDs aren't completely screwed over. Zos said his ability is balanced to be like a regular 20-second dot, but I thought it would be stronger than that, because it's a single target direct damage ability, so it should have pretty high chance to proc burning. But I'm 99% sure they tweaked this ability, and it doesn't follow proper rules and has lower than normal chance to proc stats effects. And I think that's a stupid approach. I think Zos should incentivize people to use support abilities like that. Make it powerful. A DKDD should want to use it, because it means that whenever you see a DKDD, you'll be able to expect to get major brutality from them, and adjust your build accordingly, instead of guessing or asking them to slot it. Igneous Shield kinda lost the point without helping hands. If I want to shield myself, I have Earthshield Mantle, which is stronger and cheaper. Yeah, I'm losing out on the damage shield for allies, but it's pretty small, and I can shield them better with scrubbing shields anyway. And yeah, I'm losing out on major mending, but the shield from Earthshield Mantle is straight up bigger, so it ends up being better for survivability anyway. Igneous Shield is a pretty bad ability for tanks at the moment. Petrify. I didn't end up finding it useful in solo. I kinda misread the article and I thought it would deal damage no matter what, but it's actually only when stunning. It seems to remain purely a PvP ability, so I won't give feedback on that. In solo, I already have Minor Wound from Concuss procs, from Elemental Susceptibility, and Minor Breach from Elemental Blockade, and even if I didn't, it would be much more efficient to get them from Shock and Absorb Stamina enchants, rather than casting a skill that does no damage every 20 seconds. The Shatter Spike Mantle is an extremely good ability for DDs. That's worth running pretty much every time. It's a big DPS increase, which means DKs don't have to choose between damage and survivability. They have major resolve in an ability they'll want to use anyway. Earthshield Mantle is mostly unchanged hardened armor. It's still a pretty strong and cheap damage shield for tanks. Nothing important has changed here. Magma Shell gets a longer duration and it's only a nerf if you've been using Elfbane. The old Magma had 12-second duration at base and 18 with Elfbane, while the new Magma is 15 seconds but can't be extended. I would say it's a pretty good change, but I didn't get to try it anywhere yet. I didn't test Corrosive as it's basically a PvP ultimate. but I've heard from PvPers that it's extremely broken. As for passives, I have a huge issue. Why does Mountain Giant require an Earthen Heart ability slotted? This has been a huge pain in the ass for solo Mag DK because none of the Ardent Heart abilities make sense to slot on front bar. I'm using Igneous Weapons and Shatter Spike Mantle, but on back bar, so I end up having to charge up a heavy attack on back bar if I wanna proc it. I really feel like this passive should either work with Earthen Heart ability on either bar, or it should simply proc off of any DK ability slotted. And the new Avalanche passive feels really powerful. Now as for visuals, I've seen lots of opinions and I'm way more satisfied with the visuals than an average ESO player, from what I've seen. I really like most of them, and I only have a few things to mention. I won't even mention visuals I like because they're the majority. Core of Flame and Inferno look very similar. I like the way each of them looks, but they're extremely similar, and whenever I saw an explosion, I thought, can I recast Core of Flames now? Or was that just Inferno Wave? I fixed that issue with add-ons, but that shouldn't be the solution. Magma Fist, more like Magma Goop. I don't know, the ability just doesn't feel powerful. The sound is so goopy. Also, the character animation isn't synced to the projectile, but I bet that's something they'll fix. It's mostly the sound that I have an issue with here. Igneous Weapons, I absolutely love the visuals, and the feedback I want to give here is different. I've seen lots of people saying the weapons are too bulky and that ZOS should tone them down. And I get that, but I really hope ZOS solves it by providing some minimalistic skill style instead. Because I love the way they look currently, and would hate to see them toned down. Earthspike Mantle looks kinda bad, but that's something ZOS is already aware of, and they showed a new look on forums, which looks a bit better. Now let's talk specifically about solo. Breath DK is currently in a really good spot, and only needs a small nudge to become competitive with subclassing setups. I've parsed 65k on the skeleton dummy, while on my most optimized subclassing setups on live, I parsed 67k. I've soloed a bunch of dragons, Veteran Offsworn Pit, and Veteran Harmod the Cauldron with the new DK. The short range of breath makes it much less convenient, so I actually think it should ideally be parsing more than the subclassing beam setups, which parse 67k, as a compensation for this extremely small range. Stam DK I've only tested on the dummy so far. In one of my videos I said it was on par with my pure class Templar build, but that's not the case anymore after a bunch of improvements. It now parses 61k on the dummy, while the Templar did 57k. So while it's better, it still needs some kind of buff, so it gets closer to subclass setups. A lot of it could be fixed by simply giving all pure classes some kind of unique buff. Another thing to note here is DK abilities are so worth slotting now that Tsogvin gave me the best result on the solo Stam DK. Usually Barb Trap completely tramples class abilities, but in this case it was actually worth it to source minor force from Tsogvin just so I could fit more DK abilities. Moving into DPS. Now I'm not a DPS main, I mostly make accessible DPS setups like heavy attack builds. I didn't try heavy attack DK yet, but I've played around a lot with building around Engulfing Dragonfire. I managed to parse 149k with a setup that's extremely similar to the setups I use in my beam guide, where my strongest combination parsed 152k. Similar as in both use Velofi and Nullorca, both don't use Highland 5-piece, etc. They're very comparable. The issue is that those setups were reaching 152k while getting massive penetration from Harness Quintessence, while this DK that did 149k will need to switch to light armor most of the time, and will only be able to use medium armor, just like the subclassing setups, if there's a support DD using Alkosh. I have seen a lot of misinformation about what DK can actually pull. First, it stemmed from the fact that Breath is bugged and can be double cast, and a bunch of people looked at a 200k parse thinking it was real. And by the way, the author of the video stated it wasn't real. ESO players just can't read. Some of it stems from an extremely weird behavior of pre-buffing Avalanche passive. A lot of people treat parsing as a competition, and in the past I've seen people do extremely weird stuff like pre-buffing Flawless Dawnbreaker, and then using Ethereal Whale. But jerking it for half a minute on a different dummy, just to start with a fully stacked Avalanche, has got to be the dumbest one out of them, and it sends an extremely wrong message about how powerful DK really is. You will never do that in actual content, and DK shouldn't be balanced around that. So I don't wanna call anyone who doesn't show their Avalanche stacks in CMX a liar, because if you aren't aware of this cheese, then there was no reason you'd show it. But be aware that that's a thing. I just really don't want ZOS to balance DK's damage around parses with Avalanche pre-buffed. Normal Avalanche uptime should look roughly like this. And finally the tank. I feel like trying to make pure class tanks competitive with subclass tanks is a pointless endeavor until you actually rework all of the classes. I don't see another fix. Where for DPS or solo I was advocating for giving pure classes some kind of percentage damage down buff or percentage damage taken reduction, I don't see how you'd make pure class tanks better until you rework all of them. You can make pure class tanks better at surviving, and that seems to be what's happening. DK tank felt extremely tanky, but you don't need all that survivability for most content, so you can just get more group support instead. Like, I'm sorry, but there is absolutely nothing you can do with Dragonknight's abilities that would discourage me from subclassing into Winter's Embrace every single time for that AoE major resolve for the entire group. It's just such a massive buff. The only solution is reworking that ability itself once you get to Warden rework, and giving Warden something else, something more balanced. But that obviously will have to come with buffing Warden tank in another place. Major Resolve is such a big buff that I don't think it should be accessible like that. I feel like it would be much healthier for the game's balance if Major Resolve could only be applied to yourself, or by sacrificing a 5p set, if you want it for an entire group. That would be a fair trade-off, if Expansive Frostcloak didn't exist. Still, I don't know if Zos will be capable of doing it because it's bound to get a huge backlash. Gamers don't think 1 month or even 10 seconds ahead, they want their power now and here. Even if a nerf would be healthy for the game's balance in the long term. As for the DK tank itself, it felt pretty tanky, but I'm definitely providing less support than I do with my subclass build. It just doesn't compare. I already gave some feedback on how to improve abilities for tanks when I talked about the abilities themselves. I feel like the tank was kind of an afterthought. DD abilities have some kind of interaction between each other. Your Magma Fist from Earthen Heart can empower Molten Whip from Ardent Flame. Tank gets nothing like that. They only spread your buffs like 10% block mitigation and trickier armor between skill lines, but you get no interaction between the skills themselves. I really wish they would make it so we can empower our tank abilities, the way we can empower Whip. Let's say Earth Shield Mantle would get stacks from casting DK abilities, and the damage shield would be stronger when cast at 3 stacks, something like that. It would also make Magma Fist worth slotting even if the damage buff it provides is negligible, because it would empower the Earth Shield. It would also push skills like Protect the Brood closer to Scrabbing Shields, because now it would have some small advantage over them. Both provide mana protection, Scrabbing abilities provide other benefits, but Protect the Brood would empower your next cast of Earth Shield. Or maybe tie it into Burning. Let's say proccing Burning could have a chance to empower the damage shield of your next Earth Shield Mantle, or increase the healing of your next Coagulating, or empower your next chain in some way. Like, at the moment it feels like all they did with tank was split the passes more evenly, but there is no synergy between the skill lines themselves. And I only gave survivability ideas, but if interaction between skill lines would provide better group support, that would be a huge step in making pure class tanks better. If you look at Ardent Flame, we have this passive which provides 5% flame damage taken. It has the same power whether you're a pure class DK or a subclass tank. But what if the bonus could be boosted with other skill lines? Let's say having a Draconic Power ability active would boost it to 7%, and having an Earthen Heart ability active would boost it to 9%. It would make it so pure class tanks could actively provide better group support. More than that, it could also make skills like Protect the Brood more viable, because, well, you need some Draconic Power ability active, might as well use that. Same logic can be applied to Magma Fist. You could make the number higher when it interacts with abilities from other DK skill lines. And that's it. Let me know what are your thoughts, and see you in the next video.